Welcome everyone. I'm Baird, the Director for the Oxford University Centre for Educational Assessment. I'm very pleased to welcome you all this evening to this public seminar, which I'll be chairing. And we've got, as you well know, you're all here to hear Dr. Alina von Davier. And she's going to be presenting her work on generative artificial intelligence for test development. Alina is currently Chief of Assessment at the company that's taking language learning and testing actually to so many people internationally, Duolingo. She's a research fellow at Carnegie Mellon University, as well as an honorary research fellow here in the Department of Education. Alina has worked at Educational Testing Service, ETS, in the States, which has really led the field in educational assessment. She's also held positions in Germany, Romania, and Sweden, and has many positions on boards and other academic bodies. Her disciplinary background is in mathematics, and she's combined this with her expertise in psychometrics to become a leader in computational psychometrics. In fact, you're really generating a field here. Alina was awarded a career award from the Association of Test Publishers in 2020. And she really plays a leading role in this field. I've known Alina for more years than I've cared to recount here, and we've always been interested in collaborating together, so it's with great pleasure that I welcome her to her first public seminar here this evening in the Department of Education. Over to you, Alina.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for coming here tonight. It's my pleasure to be here and share with you some of my work and my team's work on how to change assessments and how to make the assessments more in sync with how we live, how we learn, how we study, how we teach. Again, thank you, John, for inviting me, and I hope this is just the beginning of our collaborations. I'm looking forward to ideas and brainstorming that we could have together. So this is the agenda for today. I will talk about motivation, like why are we using generative AI? What do we hope to get? And how do we think about assessment in general? I will talk about digital first assessment as a platform, a vehicle, and a form of assessment that embodied pretty much our zeitgeist, the way we think and live nowadays. I will describe generative AI and AI more comprehensively, because at Duolingo and in my team, we also use AI for other purposes, not only as generative AI. And then I will emphasize and talk about the problems we want to solve with AI and why we are even considering it. I'll talk about engineering principles that we apply, about automation, and about our newest system called the Item Factory. And then we'll discuss. So probably it's not surprising that I will start emphasizing the fact that the world is changing and has been changing for a while, obviously, but it kind of feels very acute, especially now with ChatGPT. Everyone is extremely excited, to say the least. And education itself is being redefined by global events like pandemics and wars and natural disasters. But also it is impacted by technology and artificial intelligence, and by the fact that many of us, for the most part of our 24 hours, live in a digital environment and work in a digital environment. So if you think of the impact of the global events on testing, we can see, and we all noticed, the fact that the number of digital tests available have increased, especially during the pandemic. The recognition for these tests has been definitely a success, and the test taker volumes for these tests have been quite successful. Now, why is all of this happening? Well, we know that what we want our tests to do in general is to provide outreach. As the world competes for the best international talent, it does need to have scalable tools that can reach students where they are and be resilient in the face of turbulence and unprecedented growth. But traditional assessments are not resilient to turbulences, pandemics, war, natural disasters. We also want our tests in general to be accessible. We want to provide access to as many people as possible all over the world. We need to make sure that we are pulling from a broader number of countries and also within those countries from all levels of the society, and not necessarily just those students who can afford the price tag. So we want to reach out to students from everywhere. Again, traditional assessment cannot do that. They are bounded often by test centers, and they are extremely expensive, time-consuming to build, and prone to validity and security breaches. Why is that? Many assessments have a test development that involve experts writing items, and you need to write a lot of items in order to ensure test security. Then we need thousands of potential test takers who will take the items at a pilot stage. This will take forever. I mean, it's just extremely time consuming to find hundreds of test takers to pilot the items. And then you do the psychometric analysis, and then you eventually might need to do the pilot again, which is quite challenging. But even worse, from the validity perspective, these samples on which we do the pilots in traditional assessments are not representative of the population of test takers. So we need a better solution. We need a paradigm shift in assessment. We need a type of assessment that provides outreach, access, validity, and security. And we believe, and I am here to propose, that digital-first assessments are a solution to this normal, this new normal. Well, of course, this type of assessment, like the Duolingo, I mean, Duolingo is 6 years old. Didn't just show up last year. So, but it's not very old. It's still a young test. Nevertheless, it has coexisted with the traditional assessment. So this is why I find the quote from William Gibson so appropriate here, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. We have had either tests like this, like Duolingo English test, or features of this type of test in other examples. In learning, for example, in adaptive learning. Sorry. So what are digital first assessments? They are assessments that are born digital. They measure digitally mediated constructs. They are designed from the beginning with computational models and AI algorithm in mind. They are also, like the other ones, theory-based and evidence-centered, and they are valid and reliable. They have to, if you, especially as high-stakes tests, you have to make sure that the tests are reliable and valid. It's just the way you get there, which is different. They have to be integrated, and this is definitely new. They have to be integrated. This being born digital means that the infrastructure needs to support the integration of multiple frameworks and multiple automatic tools into one fluid and consistent system that provides assessment continuously. So, and it also needs to integrate the delivery with the databases. So the database in which we collect responses, writing examples, videos, video samples, speech sample, all of that multimodal data is quite significant in terms of size. And therefore, the database that is needed to support for the analysis and the collection of this type of the data needs to be up to date in terms of technology and needs to be very flexible. It's not trivial. So most of the traditional testing organizations cannot handle the data management well. It's just very complicated, and many of them have archiving of the data streams on vertical settings, say, here are all the data from January and here are all the data from March. But there is it's quite difficult to bring those together. So the way we think about data is quite different. And actually, I've been thinking in this way for a while. I have a paper on data management written in 2019, is available on Frontiers, and talking about how we need to make sure that our databases are aligned and have similar meaning across different time points. Actually, the late Professor Goldstein here had a similar interest in working on aligning databases here in the UK. So I remember his presentation in Norway at CIMO on this topic. So there are people outside of assessment, outside of the industry, who have been thinking about how to solve that problem. But for most of the assessment companies, this type of procedures have not quite made it into the everyday life. And then, last but not least, another feature of this assessment is a superior test taker experience. I am a proponent of the fact that test taker experience needs to be part of the validity framework. If people are stressed and anxious, then what we get in terms of results may not reflect exactly what they know and who they are. So I believe that this should be part of the validity. So for us at Duolingo, for example, this is extremely important. We are making decisions that are driven by the fact that any change we make needs to be in support of the test takers. This is why we prefer an adaptive test, for example. We want a shorter period of time for sitting in front of the computer and taking an assessment, but also in terms of design and in terms of accessibility of registration. For example, we take 48 hours to provide test scores, and we think that that's appropriate instead of weeks or who knows how long other providers do. We also believe, unfortunately, we have to proctor the test. We wish that wouldn't be the case, but as you all know, we have to proctor the tests. And we think that asynchronous proctoring of the test is more secure than live proctoring online. Now try to imagine you are a proctor and you are proctoring in real time a number, usually 12 or 15 test takers. So you just see some small squares there, not that unusual, like on the Zoom. How much can you actually see? What we do, for example, we proctor asynchronously. So we record the session, and then we have 3 tiers of proctors that evaluate the responses. Why is that improves test taker experience? Well, in many ways, it's not so intrusive. There is nobody looking at them during the exam. So all the analysis take place afterwards. And then we have the full recording. So there are no complaints. I mean, if there is something that's inappropriate, we will catch it and we will be telling them directly, and we can show that to everyone. Now, let's switch gears a bit. So this is what digital first assessments are. Now I will talk a bit of how we think about AI in general. Well, as you all know, actually it started here in this country. So it was defined as the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to mimic human actions and decisions. But how intelligent is it? Well, there is a Turing test that we can use in some instances, but intelligence is truly quite rare. In humans too, but it is quite rare. As smart as the underlying code and as good as the data that we have available, that's what that leads to a better predictions and better decisions. However, nowadays the AI covers a large umbrella. We have robots, automation of different types, data analysis tools, recommender system, for example, for adaptive learning, automatic item generation, automatic scoring. So truly AI is a big umbrella, but not that intelligent. So it depends how you look at it. That being said, it's extremely useful. It's very useful, especially when it is embedded in an ecosystem and a fluid infrastructure, which I mentioned before for this digital first assessment. Now, if we talk about the generative part, what does that mean? Generative part means that, well, as the word says, generates, creates different things. And those different things could be text, could be images, could be sound, could be voices, videos, could be multiple things. But what is relevant here to understand is that in order to generate something with large computational models, we actually make use of multiple streams or multiple types of AI models. We use computer vision tools to analyze the video example. We use audio processing tools to analyze the speech scoring and transcribe it. We use knowledge representation parts in order to align our test to standards. We use NLP to analyze the essays and to score them, machine learning and statistics for scoring as well, and prediction. So in other words, when we talk about large computational models for generating multimodal type of content, we are actually using tools that are in multiple areas of study, interest, and research. I also want to point out that we have had machine learning and large models available for a while. Actually, the network models were developed at Carnegie Mellon in the 70s. But for a long time, they've been dormant because the computer power was not there. So it's a very interesting evolution. It is on one side, you have the modeling part, which is really powerful. But on the other hand, you need the big data, and then you also need the computer power, which were just not available for a very long time. And then once they became available, suddenly we got to see, oh my gosh, AI is making so much progress. But a lot of it actually went on for a long time, and a lot of research went on for a long time. Now, let's talk about this a bit more. ChatGPT swept us off our feet. And indeed, it seems magical, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how many of you played with it. Please raise your hand. Everyone, really. It's so much fun, isn't it? And then you see that it works, and then you think, how is that possible? And then you see that it doesn't, or says something stupid, and you say, you see, this is bad. Well, what is it? Is it good or is it bad? It's a tool. It's a probabilistic tool. It's not magic. And a lot of work has been put into it over many, many years by people from all over the world. Keep that in mind. And I found this online. Some of you who follow me probably already saw that before. It's from HFS Research. And it's fantastic because it describes how most of us think about these tools. So on the vertical axis, you have the confidence level in ChatGPT. On the x-axis, you have the knowledge or the expertise in working with ChatGPT. And it starts with wow. Wow is the first step. It's able to answer all my questions. To wait a minute. You know, we learned that it's a probabilistic model, and it will predict those words or sentences that have the highest probability in a particular context. Therefore, sometimes it's wrong. Number 3 there will be, sometimes we generate incorrect answers. Number 4, this is actually great when you don't require a very accurate response. And then perhaps we are now back at 5 and higher in terms of confidence. We understand that these are very useful tools that can be analyzed, used appropriately with thoughtfulness and care. And they are not just buttons to press and have a result. They require significant thoughtfulness. So now getting back to the assessment. So I talk about the assessment and the need of change in assessment. I talk about the digital first assessment because they are a fantastic platform and application for these technologies. And then I talk about AI. So now I'm trying to bring this together. What are we trying to do with that? We are trying to build a large item bank in order to make sure that our test is valid and secure in a digital first environment that is administered, test that is administered on demand and at scale. Why do we want that? Well, we want to have as many items as possible that we can have the test be taken by as many people as possible in the world. So let's go back again and talk about which part of the test development we want to change. We mentioned the expert written test items, that it's a highly specialized activity and requires expertise. Then thousands of pilot administrations to get a few hundred of people per item to get stable item parameters. Psychometric analysis, and then you create a pool of all these test items. The problems, as I mentioned before, are expensive and time-consuming, and the samples for the pilots are not necessarily representative. And because it takes so long, the pool in the end tends to be quite small. So just because it's quite difficult to create items like that. So what are we trying to do is to replace this process that you see here. And here is the item factory. Actually, I proposed this concept to the team in about, I think, was February last year. And everyone said, oh, yes, let's do it. I love working for Duolingo. So you don't need to work that hard especially because everybody is, has a background in engineering. So they understood the advantages of borrowing engineering principles into building assessment. So if you care to check the internet and look into the fourth revolution principles for factories and manufacturing in general, you will find that a lot of references to automation and a lot of references to proper human management as well. So the point of managing in manufacturing actually it's expanded. So while continuing to do human management, you also do say robot or automatic tool management, and of course the full set of processes. Why are we doing that? To accelerate this generative AI into test development and to accelerate the item production while maintaining and monitoring the quality continuously. That's another reason why I've been looking into manufacturing, because there are tools in quality control that are applied in manufacturing that can be very helpful for evaluating the quality of our items as they are administered continuously. So in order to work well, we have to leverage all of these integrated theoretical frameworks that I mentioned before. It is almost, maybe the best comparison here would be a very sophisticated manufacturing, such as chips, or perhaps even better would be luxury cars. So because you still need that level of design, of human expertise, of human creativity in the first place, and you also need the safety of those cars. So you need to figure out how to create many of them at scale, how to reduce the price while keeping both the quality and the safety features. So maybe the car industry is a good parallel here, but we can think, as I said, electronic chips is probably another one. And there is a paper that will come out sometime this year. I presented about it at the conference last fall. So what are the engineering principles that we decided to use? There is nothing that surprising here, actually. If you think about, we need those in many activities, but it makes a difference if you follow them properly in an operational setting. Systemic thinking, explicit information flow. This is super important. Pattern identification, like what goes well, what is the trajectory and the journey of one item from the first moment when a creator takes a pen and a paper and starts drawing it. From that moment on, what's the full journey of the item till the item makes it into the item pool. Identifying all the characteristics of the transfer points between, say, designer and the machine that is supposed to scale up, between the machine that scales up and the reviewer, human reviewers, and so on. Identify the exact human touch points, because we know that that's where a lot of errors happen, actually. Human error, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And then is a human management component that continues to be key and essential for that. And then we use quality control systems, metrics, very specific metrics to evaluate the quality of each item and to evaluate the quality of the pool. And of course, visualization, because that makes everything easier. So what's the vision for the item factory from an assessment science perspective? This is the blueprint for the item factory. First of all, it's a human-in-the-loop system that includes several separate but integrated activities, processes, and technology. The design of the items is extremely important for us. We follow all the theoretical frameworks. We intend for our tests to be reliable and valid and accessible. And we spend a lot of time during the design process thinking of all the constraints that the test needs to match. In our case, a big constraint is time. We want our test to be relatively short. So most people finish the test within an hour. Now think about the other tests out there. They are what, 3-4 hours? That's a big difference. So in order to obtain the same reliability with the test within the hour as with the test that is 3 to 4 hours, you need to do a lot of thinking and a lot of optimization. So what is the thinking that we do? Well, we do adaptive testing, because that definitely makes the test more efficient. And then we spend a lot of time in the design of the items. We are looking for features that provide the maximum signal about the test takers per unit of time. So that's for us a criterion for designing items, which I've never heard any other test out there considering a criterion like this. So we are definitely different. Then other parts, content generation at scale, and I will give you an example how we use AI and GPT-3 to generate this content at scale. Once it's designed, then we generate. So human design, the machines generate. Then we need to review it at scale. That's also quite complex. How do you review thousands of items with humans, of course, human experts, but still you need to do it very fast. So here is where the human management comes into place, but also technology. We build a platform where reviewers come together and from wherever they are in the world, come together on the platform to review the items, edit the items, and check the factual accuracy of the items as well. Then human management, I mentioned a few times. The content management is captured and managed by a technology tool called a microservice. With this microservice, we keep track of all the parameters that describe an item. We call that metadata. And we also keep track of the exposure, how many times a particular item has been administered, how many people got to see it, over what period of time. And last but not least, quality control system. The first work that we need to do there is to identify what are the relevant metrics. What do we need to look at? What is a signal that something may go wrong? Where would we look? So we spend also quite a lot of time on identifying metrics and then monitoring them. And the monitoring part takes place both automatically, so machine-based, but also human review. So our experts get together on a regular basis, like weekly, and review everything. So let's go step by step and see a bit more in detail what I'm talking about. On our website, there is a paper, a white paper about the theoretical ecosystem that we put together to explicate our philosophy. How do we think about building assessments? What's relevant for us? And as you can see here, everything is between the taker experience and expected impact, where impact is access to assessment and to education for people all over the world. What do we have in between? In between, we have 4 frameworks. Another feature that's specific to us, I haven't seen it anywhere else, is that the security framework is part of the design. We do not think of security as something you do at the end. We think of security as something that has to be part of the test design from the beginning. We also have other frameworks, like our case is a language assessment framework, but let's say if you do a math framework, then you need to have a math framework. Validity and measurement, here is where computational psychometrics comes to help. Validation and measurement, here is where expanded evidence-centered design, which is evidence-centered design assessment, but expanded to include process information and digitally mediated constructs. And everything has to inform a digital chain of inferences as described in Chappell or in Michael Kane's paper, for those of you who are familiar with those papers. So everything has to be integrated. I think I use integrated quite a lot in this presentation, but it is definitely a key element that describes what we are trying to do. If any of these things doesn't work well with the others, then the assessment won't work well together. So the integration is extremely important. Number 2 in this specifications for the item factory is how to create items at scale. Once we have them designed, we know what we want, our experts design the item. Now, how can we make thousands of them? That's the question. This is very hard. It's hard with humans, and it's not easy with machines either. It's a hard problem to solve. This is why we use both human and machines. And let me give you an example how we use those. We use generative AI tools from outside, so GPT-3, Baird. We haven't used yet ChatGPT, but probably we will. Stable diffusion for images. And we generate fill-in-the-blank vocabulary questions, multiple choice keys, and distractors. Distractors are quite interesting to try to figure out how to generate. Baird seem to work better than GPT-3 for that purpose. Free response comprehension questions, writing and reading prompts, dialogues, and images. All of these are things that we are generating at this moment, and we use different tools listed there, except for ChatGPT at the moment. And here is an example, just to show you how GPT-3 works. So GPT-3 stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer Models. 3, it's version, the number 3 version of those models. And what's special about them, they can mirror style, format, and content, given very few examples. And they can do that because they are pre-trained on huge amount of information from wherever OpenAI got that, internet in general, and all type of corporas. So let me give you an example here. We gave a small essay, a passage from sociology, the process of socialization, a topic on business ethics, topic biology titled The History of Evolution. So we have 3 passages. But then we asked GPT-3 to generate a new topic, which is medical technology. we didn't give it GPT-3 anything about medical technology. And yet it can create, and here are 3 examples, 3 passages with the following titles: the history of X-ray, the evolution of medical technology, and the use of computers in medical research. Magic, isn't it? And it can create hundreds like that. Now, how good are they, you'll ask? Well, better actually than the human, the human written samples. In the last batch, out of 725 items like this, we lost 12. If we use human, and we actually lost more like 30%. So definitely these are much more, so far at least, seem to be quite good. We do have to monitor and do a factual check. So the traditional item review included, and includes for us as well, editorial work, quality work, and fairness and bias. We are always looking to make sure that our test is not too American, or that our test doesn't use something inappropriate. So that's where the fairness and bias review comes into place. In addition to that, on this type of items, we also use factual checks to make sure that even if the test is about the language, we don't want to have items that say something that is not true, that may confuse test takers. And here is a bit to put the whole process together. This is how we do the test development. This is here for a new item type. So new item type need to start from scratch and do the work, the design work. So here is the first part, the extended ECD, construct definition, task design. Then it moves to NLP modeling of the text itself. Try to understand what are the main features in the text of these items. Then we do a pre-piloting on a specific platform that in which we ask for consent from test takers. And we do the first set of psychometric modeling. We are looking at how difficult the task is, how well it's doing. Do we have a full information in terms of responses? Do all respond in one way? So things like that. After that, once we are happy with it, so here we also have the item generation part, but we do a lot of iterations here. So all of these gray arrows show this iteration. We do a lot of iterations for each item type until we are happy with that. And after that, they go and be reviewed by humans. Quality, fairness, and bias. Once that's done, then we go to large-scale piloting, which in our case takes place in a few ways. One is on the practice test, and after that, usually, once we are quite happy with it anyway, only after that it makes it on the certified test. So we actually do psychometric modeling at each stage. So we want to make sure that things don't change. We want to establish the baseline. So we keep an eye on those. And somewhere around this time, we are also doing the communication to stakeholders, like, hey, there is a new item type coming up. And only after that will be put on the operational test. So that's how we do it. Any questions about this or any of the other things? All right, let me go further. This is a bit on how our platform for review looks like. On the right side, you have the platform. This is what a reviewer would see. And here is where they can edit the text, they can talk with each other, they can make suggestions. Here on the left, it's a description of this process and this set of activities. Automatic review is done by machines. So that's one, it's quite basic. It's not, I mean, our items are already quite good. So that filter is not sufficient, not sophisticated enough for our needs, but we do it anyway. Item quality review, that's where item editors review it, fact check, fairness, and bias. So I already mentioned those. The new part here is, this is how the platform looks on which item editors, reviewers work. Who are our human experts? Item reviewers have experience in TESOL or applied linguistics. We do training for them to identify any FAB issues. And then a separate group of people does FAB reviews. They have diverse background, gender, country, origin, age, experience, and interest in diversity and inclusion. And then human management, which is extremely important in this item factory process. I mentioned the item microservice. This is where we keep track of the item journey and the item parameters. So we monitor that very carefully. And then analytics for quality assurance. What we are doing here is to combine the analytics for item pools with the analytics that we already have, the Aqua system for test scores, and we monitor them over time. Example of metrics for items are item exposure, time in the pool, pool refresh frequency, and other things like that. This is a system that analyzes the data continuously because our test is being taken continuously. And we provide alerts and regular updates on Slack. So we all get messages if something is not where it should be. And with this, I will conclude my presentation, emphasizing and repeating that we need to change the way we do assessment. We are in a different century and a lot of things around us have changed. So I don't see a reason to keep using the tests from the last century. Things can be actually better even if they are different and they look scary because they are different. Item production benefits from AI, automation, and engineering principles in general. Not all content needs to be AI generated, but many of these processes are actually quite helpful even for classical tests. Generative AI is very powerful and it needs human review and human touch. We still need good management of the humans and processes involved. And while we develop this for Duolingo specific needs, it can be generalized to other testing organizations and other type of assessment. Also, if you pay, obviously you did pay attention that digital first assessment, so an assessment that has been developed in this digital environment with the integration of databases, with the possibility for delivery of tests anywhere in the world at any time, and monitoring them, all of this have to work together. So in a way, we are beneficiary of this digital first assessment, we as psychometricians, because it's easier for us to build all these tools on a platform that already is there and is quite good, which is why it's much more difficult for the existing large-scale test to switch and become modern in this way, because they have to change everything. While in our case, things became organically. That's how it's a new test. It's a young test. And therefore, it was built by computer scientists to already have all of these affordances. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for questions.
Such a broad sweep there.